The Galactic Military Academy sprawled across 3 moons of Kepler 442b, its chrome towers reaching toward the star-filled void. Inside Training Complex 7, the air hummed with tension as thick as the artificial atmosphere that kept a dozen different species breathing comfortably. Cadet Sarah Chen adjusted her grip on the standard-issue non-lethal baton, its blue polymer surface smooth against her sweating palms. The weapon felt almost laughable in her hands, a training tool designed to deliver stunning electrical charges. Nothing more. Around her, 12 of the Academy's most promising predator species, cadets formed a loose circle, their various forms of natural weaponry on full display. The Zephyrian to her left flexed razor-sharp claws that could slice through titanium hull plating. Behind her, a Cromnock's bone spurs protruded from its knuckles like organic daggers. The massive Ursoid's tusks gleamed under the training facility's harsh lights, each one capable of punching through combat armor. These weren't just students, they were the genetic elite of species that had conquered entire star systems through pure physical dominance. Commander Vex Carr, a scarred reptilian whose species had ruled the outer rim for centuries, stood at the observation deck's edge. His vertical pupils tracked every movement below, with predatory precision. This was supposed to be a routine combat assessment, a way to measure the newest human recruit against established standards. What he didn't expect was for it to become a demonstration that would reshape everything they thought they knew about Earth's children. The exercise parameters were simple enough. Survive for 10 minutes against gradually increasing numbers of opponents using only Academy standard equipment. Most species managed 3 or 4 attackers before being overwhelmed. The current record holder, a Mandalorian-descended warrior, had lasted 8 minutes against 7 opponents before succumbing. Sarah had volunteered to face 12 simultaneously. The other human cadets in the observation gallery shifted nervously. Marcus whispered to his companion, "She's lost her mind. Those aren't training dummies down there, that's a Vraxi Huntmaster, 2 Klingon honor guards, and 9 other apex predators." But Sarah wasn't listening to the doubts echoing from above. Her attention focused inward, drawing upon something her alien classmates couldn't comprehend: generations of human survival instinct honed by evolution's cruelest teacher. While other species had evolved specialized weapons or overwhelming size, humans had developed something far more dangerous: adaptability and the capacity for calculated violence when survival demanded it. The starting klaxon shrieked across the training deck. The Zephyrian moved first, its lanky form blurring with inhuman speed as claws extended toward Sarah's throat. In the observation deck, cadets leaned forward, expecting to witness the quick end of human arrogance. Instead, they watched Sarah's body flow like water around the strike, her baton rising in a precise arc that caught the alien's wrist joint with surgical accuracy. The electrical discharge wasn't meant to cause permanent damage, but the precise application of force to the Zephyrian's nerve cluster sent cascades of paralysis up its arm. The predator's triumphant snarl transformed into a shriek of confusion as its primary weapon became dead weight. Sarah didn't pause to admire her handiwork. The Cromnock had already committed to its charge, bone spurs leading in a killing thrust aimed at her center mass. But humans had spent millennia learning to kill things much larger than themselves, and Sarah's ancestors had faced down woolly mammoths with nothing but pointed sticks and stubborn determination. She dropped low, sweeping the Cromnock's legs while simultaneously driving her baton upward into its solar plexus. The alien's momentum worked against it, and 300 pounds of muscle and bone crashed to the deck with enough force to rattle the observation windows. The remaining 10 predators exchanged glances that needed no translation across species barriers. Perhaps the small human was more dangerous than appearances suggested. The Ursoid bellowed a challenge that would have frozen the blood of any sensible creature, then charged with the unstoppable momentum of an avalanche. Its tusks, each as long as Sarah's forearm, promised to end the contest permanently if they found their mark. The observation deck fell silent, except for the thunder of massive feet against metal decking. Sarah had studied the footage of every species' combat methods during her preparation. She knew the Ursoid's charge was nearly unstoppable once committed, but nearly left room for human ingenuity. At the last possible second, she planted her left foot and threw herself sideways. The baton extended like a tripwire at ankle height. Physics proved an impartial judge. The Ursoid's own mass became its enemy as it tumbled forward. its roar of fury changing pitch as it realized the deck was rushing up to meet its face. The impact echoed through the facility like a small earthquake. 9 predators remained, but their confidence had evaporated like atmosphere through a hull breach. They had expected to overwhelm a soft, weak human within seconds. Instead, 3 of their strongest were down, and the small figure in the center of their circle hadn't even begun to breathe hard. The Vraxi Huntmaster's compound eyes tracked Sarah's every movement as it circled for position. Its species had perfected stalking techniques across 100 worlds, learning to read prey behavior with uncanny accuracy, but every hunting instinct it possessed screamed warnings about this particular quarry. The human moved wrong, too calm, too controlled, like a predator masquerading as prey. Sarah's smile was wolf-thin as she adjusted her stance. The Academy's instructors had drilled endless techniques for defensive combat, assuming humans would naturally seek to avoid confrontation. They hadn't accounted for a species that viewed combat as simply another problem requiring a solution, and humans had always excelled at solving problems. The next wave came in coordinated attacks, 2 Klingon honor guards moving in perfect synchronization while a Thanagarian's wings carried it overhead for an aerial strike. It was a textbook predator assault pattern, the kind that had conquered star systems. Sarah's response was purely human in its elegant brutality. She caught the first Klingon's weapon thrust on her baton, using the alien's own force to redirect the strike into its partner's path. As the 2 predators tangled, she spun away from their confusion and leaped upward to meet the diving Thanagarian. In the zero-gravity training her species had endured for centuries, humans had learned to fight in 3 dimensions. The Thanagarian discovered this as Sarah's baton found the nerve cluster where its wing met its torso. Electrical discharge combined with precise pressure point knowledge sent the winged alien spiraling to the deck in a barely controlled crash. 6 opponents remained conscious, but their formation had dissolved into individual desperation. The pack mentality that served predator species so well was breaking down as each alien realized they faced something unprecedented. Humans weren't supposed to be dangerous. They were supposed to be clever engineers and diplomats, useful for their technology and adaptability, but not actual threats in physical combat. The observation deck buzzed with confused conversations in dozens of languages. Commander Vex's car's claws unconsciously extended as he watched the small human systematically dismantle everything the Academy thought it understood about species hierarchy. His own people's legends spoke of the first hunters, mythical beings so perfectly adapted for killing that they could face any creature in the galaxy and emerge victorious. He was beginning to suspect those legends might not be myths after all. Sarah paused in the center of the training deck, surrounded by groaning aliens and the 6 who still remained on their feet. Her breathing remained steady, controlled. The baton in her hands was no longer just a training tool. It had become an extension of her will, a focus for capabilities that her opponents were only now beginning to comprehend. "Is this all?" she asked quietly, her voice carrying clearly in the sudden silence of the training facility. The 6 remaining predators looked at each other, then at the human who stood calm and ready among their fallen packmates. For the first time in their lives, creatures born to hunt felt the cold touch of being hunted in return. The silence stretched like a taut cable ready to snap. 6 predators circled Sarah with the wariness of creatures suddenly realizing they might be prey. The Draknari assassin moved first, its chitinous armor gleaming as it flowed across the deck with liquid grace. Its species had perfected the art of silent killing across 1,000 worlds, and its blade-tipped appendages could pierce starship hulls. Sarah's response defied every tactical manual in the galaxy. Instead of retreating or defending, she stepped forward into the Draknari's attack range, her baton tracing a complex pattern that seemed almost artistic in its precision. The alien's strike, perfectly aimed at her throat, met only empty air as she twisted sideways with inhuman flexibility. The return strike came so fast the observation cameras could barely track it. Sarah's baton found the joint where the Draknari's primary limb connected to its thorax, and the electrical discharge sent the assassin into involuntary spasms. It collapsed in a heap of twitching chitin, its legendary stealth capabilities reduced to helpless thrashing. 5 left. The numbers meant nothing to Sarah now. She had found the rhythm that her ancestors had discovered in prehistoric caves when dire wolves stalked the night. It was a dance older than civilization. The deadly ballet of survival that had carried humanity from the caves of Africa to the stars themselves. The twin Nexarian berserkers attacked together, their symbiotic bond allowing them to fight as a single organism with 4 arms and twice the killing power. Their species had never known defeat in personal combat, their battle fury legendary across the galaxy. But fury, no matter how legendary, was still just an emotion, and emotions could be manipulated by those who understood their weaknesses. Sarah feinted toward one twin, drawing its partner's protective response, then spun between them in a move that would have been impossible for any species not descended from arboreal ancestors. Her baton struck nerve clusters on both aliens simultaneously, the electrical charge disrupting their symbiotic connection. Without their shared consciousness, the berserkers became confused individuals, stumbling over each other as their perfect coordination shattered. 3 opponents remained: a Saurian dreadnought whose thick hide could deflect military-grade projectiles, a Vulcanoid martial artist whose species had perfected combat techniques for over a millennium, and the massive Goroth whose strength could crush starship bulkheads. In the observation deck, the silence had become absolute. Alien cadets who had grown up believing in the natural order of predator and prey watched that order crumble before their eyes. The human wasn't just winning, she was dismantling the fundamental assumptions about species hierarchy that underpinned galactic civilization. Commander Vexcar's tactical mind raced through the implications. If one human could do this with a training weapon, what could a squad accomplish with real equipment? What could an army do? His species' historical archives suddenly seemed inadequate, filled with gaps that might contain terrifying truths about Earth's children. The Saurian dreadnought's charge shook the training deck like an earthquake. Its hide had evolved to withstand the teeth of planetary apex predators, and its skull was dense enough to ram through armored walls. It was unstoppable force personified, except that humans had always specialized in finding exceptions to seemingly universal rules. Sarah didn't try to stop the charge. Instead, she guided it. A single touch of her baton to the Saurian's nerve cluster behind its ear sent electrical signals racing through its nervous system. The alien's own momentum carried it past her in a stumbling run that ended with 3 tons of confused predator crashing into the training deck's far wall. The Vulcanoid martial artist approached with more caution, its movements precise and controlled. Its species had studied combat for centuries, developing techniques that seemed almost supernatural in their effectiveness. But martial arts, no matter how sophisticated, were still bound by the physics of motion and leverage, and Sarah's ancestors had learned to fight long before anyone had invented formal techniques. The exchange lasted exactly 3 seconds. The Vulcanoid's perfect kata met Sarah's improvised response, and tradition discovered it was no match for adaptation. The alien found itself flat on its back, its carefully cultivated combat wisdom scattered like leaves before a hurricane of human pragmatism. Only the Goroth remained, its massive frame radiating power that could level buildings. It had watched its companions fall with growing disbelief. But its species' simple approach to problems hadn't changed when faced with obstacles. Apply overwhelming force until they ceased to exist. You cannot defeat strength itself, small one, the Goroth rumbled, its voice like distant thunder. Sarah looked up at the 10-foot-tall alien and smiled. It was not a reassuring expression. Strength without intelligence is just elaborate suicide, she replied, then demonstrated the truth of her words. She waited until the Goroth committed to its crushing overhead strike, then stepped aside with minimal movement. The alien's fist, capable of denting starship armor, struck the reinforced training deck with enough force to send vibrations through the facility's superstructure. In that moment of commitment, when physics demanded the Goroth follow through with its strike, Sarah's baton found the pressure point at the base of its skull. The electrical discharge didn't need to overcome the alien's massive musculature. It simply needed to disrupt the nerve signals controlling balance and coordination. The Goroth toppled like a felled tree, its own weight becoming its enemy as consciousness fled. 12 predators lay scattered across the training deck like broken toys, their groans and confused chittering the only sounds in the vast facility. Sarah stood among them, her breathing still controlled, her stance still ready. The baton in her hands had become something more than a training tool. It had become a symbol of possibilities that the galaxy had never imagined. In the observation deck, Commander Vexcar found his voice first. "Exercise terminated," he announced, though his words carried none of their usual authority. Medical teams to the training deck, but the real impact was in the absolute silence that followed his announcement. Hundreds of alien cadets stared down at a scene that challenged everything they thought they knew about the universe's pecking order. The small, soft humans, who served as engineers and diplomats, had just demonstrated capabilities that redefined what it meant to be dangerous. Sarah finally allowed herself to relax, rolling her shoulders as medical teams swarmed onto the training deck. The fallen predators would recover. The exercise had been designed to avoid permanent injury, but their pride would take longer to heal than their bruises, and their species' assumptions about human capabilities would never recover at all. "Ma'am," a young human cadet called from the observation gallery, his voice tight with suppressed excitement. "That was incredible." Sarah looked up at her fellow humans, seeing the new light in their eyes, the straightening of shoulders that had been unconsciously hunched in deference to larger, stronger species. "That wasn't incredible," she replied calmly. "That was just Tuesday afternoon practice where I come from." The implications of her words rippled through the facility like shockwaves. If this was merely routine for humans, what else were they capable of? The galaxy's power structure suddenly seemed far less stable than anyone had imagined. The aftermath rippled through the Galactic Military Academy like a stone dropped in still water. Within hours, recordings of the training exercise had spread through encrypted channels to every major species military command. Alien generals who had dismissed humanity as useful but harmless suddenly found themselves reconsidering fundamental strategic assumptions. Commander Vexcar stood in his private office, staring at the official reports flooding his desk. 12 formal requests for immediate transfer away from proximity to human assets. 6 species ambassadors demanding explanations for why their most elite cadets had been humiliated by primitive mammals. 3 different military intelligence services requesting detailed physiological data on human combat capabilities. But it was the personal message from high command that made his blood run cold. Immediate investigation required. If humans possess undisclosed military capabilities, all existing treaties and defensive arrangements require reassessment. The consequences were already cascading beyond the Academy's walls. Trade agreements built on assumptions of human weakness were being quietly suspended. Defensive pacts that relied on humanity's non-threatening status faced emergency reviews. The careful balance of galactic power, built over centuries, teetered on the edge of collapse because one small human had demonstrated that appearances could be fatally deceptive. Sarah found herself at the center of a storm she had never intended to create. The Academy's corridors, once filled with the casual dismissal that larger species showed smaller ones, now buzzed with nervous energy. Predator cadets who had barely acknowledged her existence suddenly found urgent business elsewhere whenever she appeared. "You've created a diplomatic incident, Dr. Yaleth," the Academy's Vulcanoid chief psychologist, informed her during what was officially termed a routine evaluation session. The elderly alien's normally composed features showed signs of strain. 3 species have recalled their cadets. The Draknari Assembly is demanding a formal investigation into whether humans have been concealing their true nature. Sarah sat across from the doctor, her expression calm despite the chaos swirling around her. "I haven't concealed anything. Every technique I used is standard human self-defense. Nothing more advanced than what any police academy on Earth teaches in the first semester." The implications of her words hung in the air like toxic atmosphere. If basic human training could overwhelm the galaxy's apex predators, what could their actual military forces accomplish? Dr. Yaleth's compound eyes tracked micro-expressions with scientific precision, searching for deception that wasn't there. "Explain to me," the doctor said carefully, "how a species as physically unremarkable as yours develops such capabilities." Sarah considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. "Doctor, what's the most dangerous predator in Earth's ecosystem?" Quote, "Based on physical capabilities, I would assume one of your large carnivores. Perhaps the creatures you call bears or large felines." Wrong. Sarah's smile held no warmth. It's humans. We didn't evolve claws or fangs or armored hide because we didn't need them. We developed something better, the ability to turn anything into a weapon, and the intelligence to use it effectively. She gestured to the baton lying on the desk between them. This is a training tool designed to be non-lethal. But in human hands, it becomes a force multiplier. We've spent our entire evolutionary history learning to kill things bigger, stronger, and faster than ourselves. It's not a skill we developed for war, it's a skill we developed for survival. Dr. Yeleth's academic composure cracked slightly. But your species' reputation. You're known as explorers, scientists, diplomats. We're all of those things. Sarah agreed. But we're also the species that looked at flying metal death machines and decided to strap ourselves inside them to see how fast we could go. We're the species that saw the deepest ocean trenches and said, I wonder what's down there. We don't avoid danger, Doctor, we study it, understand it, and then master it. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent chime from Dr. Yaleth's communication system. The holographic display materialized to show a Klingon general whose scarred features radiated barely controlled fury. Dr. Yaleth, General Korvex growled, I demand to speak with this human immediately. My honor guards require clarification about their defeat. Sarah stepped into the hologram's range, meeting the alien warrior's gaze without flinching. General, you dishonored my warriors with tricks and deception, Korvex accused, his voice rising to a near roar. No honorable species would employ such tactics. Honor is a luxury for species that can afford it, Sarah replied with devastating calm. My species learned long ago that survival trumps honor every time. Your warriors were defeated because they relied on strength and tradition instead of adapting to new circumstances. The Klingon's expression shifted from fury to something approaching confusion. But your people are peaceful. You avoid conflict. We avoid unnecessary conflict, Sarah corrected. There's a difference. When conflict becomes necessary, we excel at it. We just prefer not to advertise that fact because it makes other species nervous. The understatement hung in the air like the calm before a supernova. General Korvex's tactical mind, honed by centuries of warfare, suddenly grasped the full implications. If humans had been deliberately downplaying their capabilities, how much had they been concealing? How many of your people possess such skills? He asked quietly. All of us, Sarah answered without hesitation. Combat training is mandatory in human education systems. Not because we're warlike, but because we understand that the galaxy is full of dangerous things, and preparation is the difference between survival and extinction. The revelation struck like a tidal wave. Every human in the galaxy, engineers, diplomats, scientists, traders, all of them possessed combat training that could overwhelm military elites of other species. The peaceful facade wasn't deception. It was simply preference backed by overwhelming competence. Dr. Yaleth terminated the communication as General Korvex sat in stunned silence. The implications were spreading like wildfire through galactic command structures. Emergency sessions were being called. Defense budgets were being reassessed. The comfortable assumption that humanity was useful but harmless had been shattered beyond repair. What happens now? Dr. Yaleth asked, her academic curiosity warring with genuine concern for galactic stability. Sarah stood, picking up her baton with casual familiarity. Now the galaxy learns something my species has always known. It's not size that makes a species dangerous. It's adaptability, intelligence, and the willingness to do whatever survival requires. She paused at the office door, looking back at the alien psychologist. And doctor? This conversation has been enlightening, but I have training to complete. The Academy's combat requirements don't end just because everyone else has started paying attention. As Sarah left, Dr. Yaleth sat alone with the weight of paradigm shift settling around her like gravity. The galaxy had spent centuries building its power structures on assumptions about predator and prey, strong and weak, dangerous and harmless. In the span of one 10-minute exercise, a single human with a non-lethal training weapon had revealed those assumptions to be catastrophically wrong. Outside her window, She could see human cadets moving through the academy corridors with the same casual confidence they had always displayed. But now that confidence looked different, not the boldness of the weak trying to appear strong, but the quiet assurance of apex predators who simply preferred not to remind everyone what they were capable of. The galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had just revealed that they weren't the harmless engineers and diplomats that everyone believed them to be. They were the apex predators who had learned to hide their nature so well that even they sometimes forgot what they truly were. And somewhere in the depths of space, human warships continued their peaceful patrols with crews that could, if necessary, turn the galaxy's comfortable assumptions about power into cosmic dust. The question wasn't whether humanity would reshape galactic civilization. The question was whether they would choose to do so gently or whether circumstances would force their hand. Sarah's demonstration had been a warning wrapped in a training exercise. The galaxy would be wise to heed it.